Alrighty, watch friends, here we go. Episode number 2 of Rob Reports. Here we have a watch that doesn't really need much introduction. This is a watch that has been one of the backbones of Rolex's catalog since 1945. It was introduced to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Rolex and has been around in some form or fashion ever since then. So, without further ado, unlike episode number 1, where it took me almost 5 minutes to reveal the case, we're going to get there much quicker today. Here we have the Rolex Datejust 41, reference number 126334. This is the latest and greatest, if you will, version. This is the, as you can see, the coronet. Let me get that in focus here. You can see that little coronet there at the 6 o'clock position, and that is one of the key indicators to let you know this is the newer model. But that's the subject of today's video, is we're going to be talking about the Rolex Datejust and basically how it has become one of, if not the greatest everyday watch that's out there. I know that's kind of a bold statement, but I truly believe that this watch is hands down one of the best watches out there, just for all-around purpose. So many watches, you could even go within the Rolex umbrella. You could say the Daytona, the Submariner, the Sea Dweller. A lot of these watches are created with a specific task in mind, a specific lifestyle, some sort of a sport that's in mind. The Datejust is not the case. The Datejust was created as almost just around like their all-around watch. Something a little dressier, something a little sportier, just an all-around everyday watch. So, like I mentioned already, it was introduced in 1945. It is one of the first model, I should say. The first model came out in 18 karat yellow gold, and it wasn't until the 50s, with references 5030 and 5031, that steel was introduced. Steel and two-tone was introduced with gold. So that kind of puts it in perspective that this watch was very first introduced with yellow gold. This was a big deal. When the Datejust came out, Rolex wasn't messing around. You know, nowadays it has become so commonplace to have the date change over at midnight. Nobody even thinks twice about it. But guess what? This is the watch that did it. This is the watch that made it commonplace. That's kind of a big deal. Just that one little fact. It's crazy to think about that the Datejust was the one that brought that normal feature to the marketplace. The bracelet on this watch is known as the Jubilee. So let me see if I can get this in focus here. There we go. So the Jubilee is a 5-link style bracelet. Some might say it's a hate it or love it kind of bracelet. I actually love this bracelet. It is hands down one of the most comfortable bracelets that you will ever wear. Has a good taper, as you can see, down to the clasp. Smaller links, individual links. These are screw-in links. There's your screw right there. These bracelets are something to behold of. It really is something that just disappears on your wrist. The drape with those small links just perfectly hugs your wrist, keeps it nice and balanced, and plays nicely with the curvature of the case and those lugs to kind of just disappear on your wrist. So the Jubilee was created specifically for the Datejust. You had the day date that had the president style links. You had the Submariner, or the I should say the oysters, you know, the precisions, different things like that that would carry the oyster style links. But it wasn't until the Datejust that the Jubilee came about. Now you can pretty much get the Jubilee on almost any model, but this is where it started. The design, the basic design layout has been, for the most part, relatively unchanged since the 1960s. You have the crown, the coronet at the 12. You have, obviously, Datejust. You have all the good stuff, the Oyster Perpetual text. Like I mentioned, the coronet at the 6 o'clock, indicating that this is the latest generation of the watch. Pardon the smudges. I've been known to make some smudges throughout the videos. You've got the signed crown. And again, overall, just super, super clean lines. So again, the basic design has been pretty much unchanged since the 60s. However, there's been a few major milestones, if you will. You've got, in the 70s, they introduced the quick set date. So before the 70s, you would basically have to rotate throughout the entire day to switch the date over. Here's that winding. If you can hear that, get it up and running. There it goes. So, quick set. That right there came about in the 70s. Kind of crazy to think about, but there you go. Right? Some Rolexes have had different date wheels, whether it's a roulette wheel and various fonts, but the quick set came about in the 70s. We'll get it to today's date. All right, in the 80s, there was another major milestone where they switched from acrylic to crystals, the acrylic crystals over to the sapphire crystal. Kind of a big deal there for scratch resistance, for everyday wearability. Kind of a big deal. Fast forward till 2009. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but this isn't meant to be an all-encompassing history. This is just a brief summary of this one particular watch. So in 2009, Rolex came out with the Datejust 2. It was kind of a big deal because it was the first time that they released the Datejust in the 41mm case. And as a result of that, they didn't quite get the case proportions correct. They just kind of jumped in the craze of the bigger watches and threw the Datejust out in a 41mm case. It didn't quite work. The proportions were off just ever so slightly, and the results indicated as much. It just didn't sell like they thought it would, and it only lasted a couple years and was pulled. Basically throughout that time, you had the normal sizes were basically 28mm to 36mm. Those were the traditional Datejust sizes. After, like I said, a couple years of production, the Datejust 2 got pulled, and then it didn't come out until re-emerge as the Datejust 41 until 2016. 2016, the 41mm came back out, but they spent that time and they really paid attention to some of these lines, the curvature of the case, the way that the lugs and the Jubilees integrated together. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, in the Datejust 2, it was only offered on an Oyster, not the Jubilee, which did not please a lot of the fans. Again, this is the bracelet that was made for the watch. It's kind of a big deal that it wasn't offered on the watch back in 2009. Not everybody wants the Datejust on the Oyster. So, again, in 2016, the Datejust 41 gets released. They bring the Jubilee into the family. They redesign the case and how everything works together, and it works, and it starts to sell, and it actually sells really, really well. The crazy thing about the Datejust is that it has been there for so long, basically 3/4 of a century, and everybody seems to respect it, love it, whatever, but it just does not get the love that the other stalwarts of the lines, of the model lines get. The GMT Master, the Submariner, the Daytona. It's always there, it's always in the background, and people usually will say something nice about it, but then they'll say, oh, well, I want the sub, or I want the Daytona. So this was given to me, I shouldn't say given to me, this was an opportunity that I had kind of out of the blue, and I had to jump at it because to me this is one of the quintessential Rolex models. A Datejust in 41 in black stick indices with the white gold on the Jubilee just is the perfect all-around watch. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on the wrist. Oh, forgot to give you a wrist check. So here we are, gray NATO today. Big fan of the NATOs. And like I mentioned to you in episode 1, we're gonna be talking about all things horology. Mickey Mouse watches, Casios, Timex, Datejusts, everything in between, and even above. So, I mean what I say, that I wear stuff that I like regardless of the price bracket. This one's actually hard to come by, given that it's a mechanical movement. Generally, you see Mickey Mouse watches in quartz and smaller sizes or plated cases and not steel cases like this one. So this was kind of a rarity and I had to pick it up. It actually kind of wears like a Milgauss would. So let me get this off camera so I don't knock the camera over. And I will put on the Datejust. The clasp for the Datejust is polished. You can tell there's a difference between the tool watches and the dressier watches when you see the polish inside versus the sandblasting. This is a very secure system for your clasp. It is not just tension fit, it actually has an enclosed clasp right there. You have an easy link, right? Not as great as the glide lock, but still you have an easy link in case you get a little swole on that day. You do have some functionality for a difference of some, I think 1 to 2 spots for micro adjust. It is kind of a bugger to get in there with a tool, so ideally it would be nice to have some toolless strap chain or toolless sizing, but again, you can get the job done relatively well. So here we go. This is 7.5 inch wrist, maybe just a scotch underneath 7.5, and you can see the thinness. There's down to, I think the barrel shot is what it's called, down the barrel. I don't have the flattest of wrists, but you can tell that the curvature drapes rather well. The Jubilee hugs the wrist. Is an extremely balanced watch. One of the most spectacular watches out there as far as the fluted bezel at catching the light. Just some generic fluorescent office lighting in here, and you can see how it plays with the lighting all over the place. And then mix that with the polished surfaces on the Jubilee and also the case, and you can see how dynamic this watch can be. Lume is rather impressive on this watch as well. Healthy shot of Lume. I can give you a Lume shot here in just a little bit, but maybe we'll do the Tim Mosso approach and give you a Lume shot at the end. So again, not the all-encompassing history of the Datejust, but just a quick 15-minute summary as to why I think this watch deserves more credit than it gets, and why I think it's one of, if not the best all-around everyday watch. You can wear this with a suit, you can wear this with shorts and a t-shirt, and it works quite well. Thanks for the time, and until the next video, keep wearing those watches. Okay, and we're back. There you see it. There is the all-impressive Lume shot. Tell me that doesn't just impress you. Here is your everyday watch, dressy watch, sporty watch with amazing Lume. Clearly see the lack of Lume there at the 12 o'clock with the crown, and the other lack of Lume at the 3 o'clock with the Cyclops there. But beyond that, amazing visibility in pitch black.